From ancient nuclear reactors to out-of-time artifacts, we're discussing pre-human civilizations. Welcome to the Grizzled and Weird. I'm Mike.
I'm Kirsten.
I'm Doug.
And we're here with a show once again where we present Doug with, trying to convince Doug of the possibility of the strange and unknown.
Yes.
And today we're discussing lost ancient civilizations, advanced civilizations.
Yes.
So
Atlantis,
the Island of Mu, all that crazy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So there's, jump right into it here.
Yeah.
The whole theory of this, there are lost civilizations that predate known human history. This is the hypothesis there.
Yep.
But there are even some civilizations on Earth that predate Homo sapiens.
Mm-hmm.
So this is talking like, ancient before us civilizations. There's evidence of lost technology such as Damascus steel and Lycurgus cup. That's the one that changes colors, which had like tiny particles in the glass.
Right.
That they don't have no idea how they got those particles. Stuff that we couldn't reproduce until recently.
Yeah.
Right? So yeah, it's like lost technology that they had in the past. Some even believe that history is far older than the 300,000 years or so that humans have been on Earth. The main conclusions people believe in are that, one, there were advanced ancient civilizations lost to history, and two, the second one was that there was pre-human civilization. So two different ones. One that there's older versions of us that were more advanced, like Atlantis,
right?
and that kind of thing, and then ones that predate us, or whatever it was. So we'll jump right into the crazy.
Yes.
So first off, have you heard anything about this or like studied anything about this?
No, I mean just little bits here and there.
The ancient aliens, crazy stuff.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Atlantis is one of those.
Well, yeah. Plato made Atlantis up.
Right.
There was no record of Atlantis before he mentioned it.
Yeah.
Right.
So
that's true.
So I mean, that's obviously that's just a title we use.
Right. Yeah.
He
Exactly.
talked about this, so maybe it's this.
Maybe it's this. Right. So yeah, we just use Atlantis now to describe any ancient lost.
Sure.
The whole theory.
Right.
All right. So we'll jump right into some of the crazy hypothesis here. Reasons behind this is more like the explanation for it. So the charity of the gods theory says some believe that humans were visited by an alien race that granted them advanced knowledge, right? This is one of those far out there ideas, that there's a whole History Channel show about ancient aliens, about this hypothesis,
Sure.
right?
Okay.
So anytime they come across something that can't be explained by how did these ancient people do this?
Right.
Aliens is
Specifically, aliens.
So, yeah, I mean, it's not one of those. We're going to not focus on the alien answer this time. We're going to focus on, we're advanced at one point enough that, humans could actually do, just like the Damascus steel and the Lycurgus cup, proof that we were smarter than we thought we were. The other one is time travel, which is another one of these. Like I said, we start with a crazy.
Yeah.
This is where somebody's traveled back in the past and showed people how to, do this, and then they kind of got lost. The technology got lost, or whatever.
Okay.
Or they brought advanced technology in the past that didn't survive. Just maybe it's Mandela effect. Went back in time, and that's what's causing Mandela effect. And the other one is seeded Earth. This is the whole Battlestar Galactica theory, where we were an advanced civilization from another planet that came here, and then over time we lost the technology, and then and then evolved from that. De-evolved, then back up to where we are now. So the crazy theories, is there anything we want to discuss about these? I know the alien thing that's a whole other show.
Yeah.
We'll dive into that. We're just, like I said, we're going to focus this show on why the humans were so advanced back then, that they were. All right, so what evidence do we have of this?
A lot.
A ton. What surprised me about this is that I went into this kind of like, okay, this is a fun topic,
right.
Not necessarily something I was like really big on. And then I started like gathering the evidence for this, and then like the experts that believe this, and I'm like, wow, there's a lot of evidence out there, and a lot of experts that are like, I mean, not like there's like Graham Hancock, who's always on like Joe Rogan show. And he's got his theory of this advanced civilization.
Yeah,
the guy's awesome. I like that guy. But I mean, he's not like, there's like I don't want to call him not respectable, but there's like scientists and people from NASA that are actually like, we believe in this theory. So one of the big things is last January, there was 12,000 documents that were declassified by the CIA as part of the Freedom of Information Act.
Okay.
So every year we get like tons of stuff. And one of the little things that kind of like slipped through was a small 57-page document on lost ancient human civilizations. This was kind of like when they do these information dumps every year, because of the Freedom of Information Act.
Yeah.
They don't announce like, oh, this is
what's
our
out.
secrets that we had.
Yeah.
They just dump it.
Right.
And then people like scour through it and go like, what were they hiding?
Right.
Yeah, one of the things they found was this 57-page document. What's interesting about this document is that it's been heavily sanitized. It's a list. The original document is 284 pages.
Yeah.
And there's a document commissioned by them in the 60s. So it was classified in the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
And this document is basically what the document was about, was lost civilizations, basically stuff that was civilizations that were destroyed by natural occurring stuff, like so Atlantis and that kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then how it could happen again, basically, when, where
Sure.
could we lose civilization, or what proof is there of civilization, stuff like that. And the article goes on and it mentions like Easter Island being part of the lost continent of Mu. So it mentions in detail Mu and how far it extended out in the Pacific.
Okay.
And which is odd for just kind of, it basically mentions it like fact. Like we knew it. Like this is what we know.
Sure.
Mu was this size.
Right.
And Easter Island is like this far tip of it right here. That's
Okay.
what's left. It mentions, the pyramids of Egypt, Baalbek, which we'll get into, Tiwanaku. So there's like a whole bunch of these. We're going to get into some of these. Mm-hmm. But it lists all these things, right? So we're going to focus today on the proof that we have that's listed in this, right? Not proof necessarily that it's proof, but there's all this other proof, whatever. The stuff that's mentioned in this document is basically, because there's a whole bunch.
Yeah.
I had to narrow it down to like what are we going to focus on.
Yeah.
In fact, we added one last minute,
Yeah.
which is exciting.
It's just too cool.
It's just too cool not to mention. So, but yeah, so it was 1966. It's only been recently released and 284 pages. So it's been heavily sanitized. So out of all the crazy stuff it lists in that 57 pages, it makes you wonder what's in the rest of that
Right.
284 pages that they're not letting us see.
Yeah.
That they're still classifying. So, and why it was classified to begin with? Because if it was to look at it, you're like, okay, this looks like writings of like some crazy guy, some
Yeah.
crazy theorist guy wrote this stuff, right? But this was an article that was commissioned by the CIA.
Yeah.
And classified by them in the 60s. So a lot of people are pointing to this as like, oh, it's a smoking gun.
Yeah.
But it's just, there's a whole lot of reason why people classify
It
this.
means look closer at the other 12,000 pages.
Yeah.
Because they're throwing this in there to
Yeah.
get all the
Yeah.
conspiracy theorists.
Exactly. Like,
Pull
let's
their
pull all the
attention away.
craziness out of this article and throw that out there.
You're right.
And we're not going to mention all this. So, proof that civilization is far older than the history books tell us. Now, this next bit here is not so much, this is fact. So we want to get in there because there is a lot of stuff that is proven that civilization is far older than the history books tell us.
Yeah.
But it's not mainstream, which is another thing that gets me, is that even though these things are discovered
Yeah.
and you look it up and it's out there, we're still teaching that, civilization is,
However many.
Yeah,
years
exactly.
old, yeah.
Okay.
Egypt or whatever, the far,
Okay.
The first one is the Sphinx. Now, the Sphinx this is a weird one because it is a big tug of war between archaeologists and Egyptologists and geologists.
Oh, okay.
So there's a huge fight in the scientific community because Egyptologists and archaeologists tell us that the Sphinx is about 4,500 years old. It was built by Pharaoh Khafre during the Old Kingdom, but there's new evidence to suggest that it's far older, almost double its age, what they listed as. So they believe that it was part of the Sphinx was there. It's already been proven that the head on it has been carved out of, it used to have a lion head.
Oh, okay.
And then the pharaoh, so the head's new. So Khafre did his head on the Sphinx. But the rest of the body, the actual lion body part of it, is far older. It was a lot older statue. So we're told that it was the erosion basically on it.
Right.
So we're told the erosion on the Sphinx is from sand and wind, but every geologist that looks at it says it's water erosion, right? There's massive areas of restoration work was done on the Sphinx only 3,200 years after it was built due to deterioration caused by wind, but the Sphinx was buried in sand for 700 of those years, right? So they're like, how much damage, that much restoration had to be done on it by the Egyptians.
Yeah.
That's soon after it was built,
Yeah.
when 700 of those years it was covered in sand. There was
Right.
no wind erosion on there. So Egyptologists say that the water erosion from Nile flooding, but the lower stones are not as badly eroded as the upper stones, and the erosion patterns are the same patterns from rainfall. So that's where they date it back, because it was the only time that there was that much rainfall in the period was a long time ago, double the time the Sphinx was actually, were said it was 7,000 to 9,000 years ago. So basically what someone did is a geologist basically was looking at the Sphinx and noticed the water erosion. It's like, this matches this pattern. So he took a picture of the Sphinx's erosion pattern, and sent it to 10 of his colleagues, basically, with no context, right?
Right.
Didn't tell him it was in a desert. Didn't tell him that it was part of the Sphinx.
Right.
Just showed him the erosion parts. And all of them are like, yeah, that's water erosion from rainfall. No, that's rainfall, water erosion. So geologists who look at the Sphinx are all like, this is caused by rainfall.
Right.
And then because this goes against what the archaeologists and the Egyptologists are telling us, what they know the civilization was here at this point.
Right.
They fight against it. They're pushing back because this is changing all their theories.
Right.
So right now, that's why it's not mainstream that the Sphinx is twice as old as it normally is. Mainstream, science is saying that it's only 4,500 years old, but all the geologists that look at it say no, it's far older.
Right.
The water erosion is from rainfall, and the only time it's rain was 7,000 to 9,000 years ago.
Right.
So 7,000 to 9,000 years ago, a lot older.
Seems a lot more reasonable.
Yeah. And the reason why the archaeologists are fighting against it is because the age of the Sphinx is the primitive men in the area could not possibly build such a thing. The men of that time was too primitive. There's no way they could have built the Sphinx at that age, Stone Age or whatever. Which brings us to Göbekli Tepe. Now, Göbekli Tepe is the oldest known. This is a recent find, right? And it basically goes against everything we were told about civilization here. So the oldest known temple built by man was discovered in 1994 on a Turkish hillside in Göbekli Tepe. It was built in the 10th century BC, almost 12,000 years ago. It challenges everything we know about how old civilization is. It's older than agriculture, pottery, the written language. I mean,
Right.
it's built by what we would call cavemen, the hunter-gatherers, right? And I was going to bring up some pictures here to show you how Göbekli Tepe looks, how advanced it is. This thing is advanced, and it's huge, the entire hillside, but it has columns.
Yeah.
It has, stone columns. It has detailed images of carvings of animals and different things, scenes. This is the Stone Age, right? So this was built by cavemen, and the site itself is huge. I can tell you how it looked back in the day. It had big raised columns with blocks on top of the columns, stuff that was reserved for far later when there was actually civilization.
Right.
So these are hunter-gatherers. These are back in the time that cavemen didn't gather this. It's a massive structure covering an entire hill. It was huge stone columns and intricate carvings. Now the pyramids we can explain away through massive labor force over time. Archaeologists are baffled as to how the Stone Age people managed this feat. They did not gather in large groups before. Yet somehow they managed to organize this engineering feat without math, written language, or tools, or even a way to feed the workforce because they didn't have agriculture. Right. So these guys had to bring this many people together to build this massive temple.
Right.
And they had to go hunt for food every night. Right. They didn't have time to build this. Is what science tells us that there's no way.
And what's the evidence that it's as old as they are saying it's this old?
It's been dated that way. I mean, this is not. This is the fact that. This isn't a theory. This is actually, it is this old. It's now recognized as the oldest man-made temple.
What's the techniques they use to age these?
I'm not exactly sure, but I mean, modern scientists is basically saying this is 12,000 years old. I mean, you can go look. This is not like a fringe theory. You can go look up Göbekli Tepe. This is officially known as the oldest temple. So they dated the stones, or whether they dated, because it was buried. This, a farmer discovered this in a back hill on his property, like a stone sticking out. So he called people. This looks like carved stone.
Yeah.
Since 1994, they've been uncovering, and they've only got like one section of the hill. I wish I had a better picture of the hill. So they only have like one section carved out here, or basically excavated. But there's a whole hill. This thing is huge. Yeah. So yeah, you know the idea how big this thing is. But proof that there was civilization. I mean, it had to be some kind of civilization for this to happen. Hunter-gatherers couldn't build this and have time to feed themselves.
Yeah.
Because the workforces would take. So at some point, cavemen gathered together, had a way to feed themselves, and take the time to build this. This is one of the things that's proof that there's, civilization maybe far older than we thought. So at least, the ability to build carved stone like this.
Right.
All right. So those are the proof ones. So the Sphinx and Göbekli Tepe is proof that civilization is older than we thought, or that we're told.
Right.
But now to get into like the strange. What is the older than this? These lost civilizations were advanced technologies.
Yeah.
So there's several sites of engineering feats that can't be explained. Not as old as the last two, of the Sphinx and this, but stuff that where stones fit together so tightly you can't fit a razor blade in between them,
Yeah.
with such precision. There's, precise, smooth, inlaid stone cuts made by hand without use of a router. These are ones in like South America they can't explain. Basically, they're stone cut, like a flat stone. One thing is carve a flat stone, but then they carve out a perfect square set into the stone, right? And it's like they don't have the tools to cut that precise, because it's flat on the inside. It's like
Right.
someone like now you have a router to do that.
Right.
Nowadays, they didn't have no way to do this back then. If they had to chisel it by hand,
Right.
how they could get that such precise measurements, But we have to talk about is one of the ones mentioned in the CIA document, the triathlon of Baalbek. Now, Baalbek, Lebanon. This site is basically attributed to the Romans. So there's two in Baalbek, Lebanon. They built a temple to Jupiter and a temple to Bacchus, and it was impressive because they got giant columns, right?
Yeah.
15-foot, or actually 20-foot high columns. But what's impressive is the foundation stones. When the foundation stones are not built by the Romans. The Romans did not. Basically, they built these temples on top of the existing structure.
Oh.
And the existing structure is what has people baffled, right? Because they have no idea how far back it goes. But I'll give you an idea of some of these stones. So, the pyramid stones average between 2.5 and 15 tons, right? That's impressive feat to move all those stones to build
Yeah.
the pyramids. But we've proven that over time, given enough labor force, they could move those stones into position. These foundation stones, this is one that's still in a quarry that hasn't, it's not actually on the foundation. These foundation stones here are 66 feet long, 15 feet wide, and weigh over 1,000 tons.
Wow.
The largest mobile crane that we have today can only lift 850 tons. To lift more than that, you have to have the big harbor ones that lift tugboats and stuff like that. But
Right.
they're permanently built in giant structures. We couldn't move these stones today.
Right.
We have no, how they did this. There's not, there's basically they say these stones are too big. You couldn't, comes a time when you get stuff big enough that you can't throw enough bodies to lift these things, right? I mean, you can explain the pyramids away. These can't be explained because these stones are set 30 feet high perfectly on these foundation blocks. So there's blocks 30 feet high, and then these foundation stones are set on top.
Oh.
It's just one of those things that you're like, what? Yeah, so this is an image of the stones here.
Yeah.
I never had a picture of them, but so there's 3 of them on this foundation. And then there's another one that's the one that shows that's still in the quarry. So they know where the stones came from. They saw them carved out.
Right.
Carving the stones out is one thing. How they moved them and set them 30 feet up in place,
Yeah.
we have no idea.
Right.
It's one of those things, it's impressive engineering feats that you're like, and it doesn't have any of the, right now, the history books say the Romans did it. The Romans built this. The Romans built those stones, moved them in place, but it has none of the, first of all, the Romans didn't have the technology to move this.
Right.
They did impressive shit. The aqueducts and everything else, but these
Right.
are not these size stones, and these stones don't have the holes in them or everything that any of the telltale signs of how the Romans moved big blocks before.
Right.
They drill like post holes in the side, and then they'd fill them back in. These stones have none of that. And the Romans don't claim. The Romans who recorded everything
Yeah.
didn't claim to build the foundations.
Okay.
So they list who built the columns. They wrote down what engineers worked on it and everything else,
Right.
but they don't list the foundations. So, and they kept record of everything.
Yeah.
So, but you read a history book, they tell you the Romans built this. But,
That's pretty impressive.
yeah, those like size of that stone. Yeah, baffling. We don't know how they did it. So, and then there's other artifacts too. Like, I mean, you mentioned like the Baghdad battery.
Yeah.
What
That's insane to me. We talked about that in school, and even as a kid, I'm like, how does, we're not taught how intelligent,
Yeah.
prehistoric was.
Exactly. How old is stuff?
Yeah.
The Baghdad battery, it's roughly 2,000 years old. It's a clay jar found outside of Baghdad. It has an asphalt stopper with an iron rod sticking out of it and surrounded by copper tube on the inside. When filled with vinegar or any other electrolytic fluid, it produces 1.1 volts. And now scientists believe that it was used to electroplate like items of gold and silver, right? So they had this technology to electroplate stuff back in the day.
Yeah.
So this is one of those. It's just an example of technology that they had back in the day. Now the another one is the I'm not going to be able to say this, the Antikythera mechanism. I've heard of this one, haven't you? This is the one, the Greek. Yeah, Antikythera mechanism.
No.
It's a Greek analog computer used to predict astronomical positions and eclipse. It's dated to 200 BC, and it was found in an ancient shipwreck in 1901. But its true purpose wasn't discovered until 1974 when internal gears were found. But it wasn't until 2008 when advanced X-ray technology mapped all 37 gears inside, and the accuracy of the device could be tested. So and this thing wasn't on a shipwreck. It wasn't like in a position of like an artifact, right? It was with tools. It wasn't like it was something special, right? In the way the Greeks kept stuff on the ship, there was special spots. So it was an artifact to be kept in a certain area.
Right.
This was kept like it wasn't any big deal. But this is an analog computer with 37 gears that the ancient Greeks had to map, stars and eclipses and everything else. So, I mean, they had that precision.
You should pull it up.
Yeah, I'm sure you've seen
Just
this.
because of the gears on it,
Yeah, it is.
blows me away that you have to be precise about measurements, down to,
There you go.
Centimeters or even smaller than that.
Yeah, I mean, so this is what it looks like. They just pulled it out. They didn't know what it.
It's not the X-ray.
Yeah, this is what the inside looks like. So yeah, they rebuilt. They basically didn't know what it did until they built it. They're basically like, "What is this thing?" Right? And then when they mapped all the gears inside, they recreated it.
Where's the actual?
The actual
device?
what it looks like is this. This is. But they didn't know anything other than it was like a metal wheel thing because it's all corroded. And
Yeah.
they couldn't,
Shipwreck.
until they had the technology to peer inside of it, they had no idea what the hell it was, what it was used for. And then until they put it together, it was literally until they mapped the gears out and put it together. It's in 3 pieces. The actual artifact. So, the ancient man was a lot smarter than we thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Greeks were pretty brilliant.
The Greeks were pretty brilliant. The fact that they did this astounds me.
Yeah.
200 BC, we've already mapped this. The fact that they could map, they knew the stars and they mapped the.
Well, they figured out the circumference of the Earth to
Right.
an amazing degree. So.
Right.
Right. Yeah. There's a ton of these things. A ton of these things back there, prove that there was lost knowledge at some point.
I would argue that the fact that they found it with tools doesn't mean this wasn't a special device because we've never found another one of these.
That's true.
If it was something that was common every day, we would have found more.
Yeah.
Right.
So this was obviously something
Right.
somebody super brilliant had come up with,
Right.
and it's probably a one and only. I would argue.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, I can't argue against that. I'm just saying they point this out because the people that found it in the shipwreck, the archaeologists. But yeah, I agree with you. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a.
Yeah, it's
Could
not
have
like
been
they were
stolen, or
widespread.
it could have been
Yeah.
someone stashing it away, or
They were actively using it at the time that it.
Right.
Yeah.
No, it was on
whatever,
it was.
the shipwreck happened.
Yeah, they said it wasn't a particularly important ship that it was on, but like she said, it could have been stolen, or it could have been borrowed, or it could have been any number of things.
Right.
That
The person who made it was on that ship.
that person.
Right.
Who
He was a
knows?
crackpot that no one believed. Like, I just can map the stars. Like, yeah.
Whatever.
whatever.
All right, I'm taking this to the Persians, and then he shipwrecked.
Taking this to the Persians. Screw you guys.
For you guys, I'm out. All right, so these are ones where like ancient artifacts where
Yeah.
we know this is what they were for. We can prove what they were for. It just all that proves is that we were a lot smarter back then than we thought.
Yeah.
So, London Hammer.
Yeah.
So this is really old. I don't know. We've got to the tests on the iron show that it's a unique blend of metallurgy consisting of 96.6% iron, 2.6% chlorine, and 0.74% sulfur. So
Yeah.
it was only until recently that we could actually, produce this purity of iron.
Right.
and the fact that it hasn't rusted since they found it,
Yeah.
right? That we know of, because this has a strange history. Once you research the hammer, right? So
Right.
the family that found it had it for like ever. They're just like, oh yeah, just basically they through by in Texas, they saw the wood sticking out of
Right.
the rock, and then they realized the wood was fossilized. So they're like, oh look, we found fossilized wood. So
Right.
they chipped it out, and for the longest time, it was a block with that piece of wood sticking out the end, and that was it until the grandson or whatever, the family that found it, right, decided to break it open, get the and see how far the wood went down, and discovered the hammer.
That's cool.
And then that's when he's like, oh, I got something old here. And that's when he sold it, and that's when it finally first got tested in the 80s. Then it wound up in a museum there in Texas, right? And it was tested several times. The iron was tested, the wood was tested, the minerals. Geologists came and tested the minerals in the area. That's when they started dating it.
Right.
And then there's like, okay, after that, it started getting some attention. And then they scheduled to have it shipped off for further testing,
Yeah.
and it got stolen from the museum.
Yeah.
The only thing stolen from the museum was the London hammer and the cash in the cash register. So that was it. So
That's suspicious.
because like you do if you're a thief, you go in there like, oh, we're gonna knock over the cash register,
Yep.
and oh, look, a hammer! I need a hammer.
They break it out of the rock and use it as an actual.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, this wood's crap. We gotta replace the handle on this.
Oh my god. Die.
Yeah. So London hammer's missing. We don't know what London hammer is today. The CIA are testing it. Somebody.
Time travelers.
Time travelers came back.
Like,
Oh crap! I left the hammer back
God
there.
dang it.
They should have some crappy hammers in the future.
Yeah, true. They did. But this is, so this is the one that messes with me out of, because there's a ton, we only stick to a few artifacts, right? There's a ton of these, stuff like this. This is by far the oldest, which is why I included it. Because it's a crazy amount of old. Most of the artifacts are all like, okay, ancient human civilization, maybe the Stone Age wasn't, there was a few, people in the Stone Age that could develop tools,
Right.
metal
Yeah.
tools. Maybe metallurgy was,
Yeah.
some caveman found a way to,
Figure it
to
out.
figure it out.
Yeah.
Maybe, right? You can believe that. This puts it at ridiculously. This is like dinosaur tool. Dinosaurs are building this. All right. So before we go further, Doug, is there any you have any thoughts on any of this stuff so far?
Occam's razor. This is, yeah, like you said. I mean, sure, there's this temple that could be super old, but it's easier to assume that yes, one group of ancient people managed to get their crap together earlier than other people did,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and built this thing.
Yep.
Rather than it was aliens who taught people how to
Right.
move
Yeah.
rocks.
Yeah.
Yes. Exactly. And like I
Or
said,
moved rocks for them.
Right.
yeah.
Here you go. We get you a nice foundation.
Right.
Like what?
Yeah.
Come on.
I know the ball bed stones. Like I said, I'm not into the alien theory, right? We're not, like I said, that's a whole other episode. But the engineering feat of like we can't move those stones today, right? Without having to build a structure there to lift them.
Well,
I
I mean, but admittedly, we wouldn't go to the lengths that
No.
they would
No.
to do it if we
Yeah.
felt it was
Yeah.
important.
people have a hard time believing that 25-ton stones and the pyramids were moved by people.
Yeah.
But we've proven they've actually got out there and proved that they can, with enough labor force and enough time,
Yeah.
you could pull that off.
Right.
1,000 tons, 66-foot long, 1,000-ton stone.
But again, is it easier to believe that there was a super advanced civilization with repulsor beams that has totally disappeared from the face of the earth,
Right.
or aliens came down and helped them move some stones, or that somehow they figured it out?
All I know is Atlanteans are very helpful people. They just traveled around the world lifting rocks for people.
Or what is that? The sea people, right?
Yeah, the
stuff.
Lemurians. And
Yeah.
they're like they just go around, building hammers for
Destroying
for dinosaurs
civilizations.
and
Just doing a little bit of everything. No?
yeah. But there's, crazy stuff. That hammer messes with me. like I said, until I saw the picture, I was like, oh, okay.
Can you carbon date fossilized material? I'm not
I don't think so. That's
No.
what they had to do with the rocks. But it does take, I mean, regardless, it takes forever to fossilize, for wood to fossilize.
Yeah.
So that still puts it ancient.
Yeah.
But, but yeah, that's not that they couldn't judge from the handle the age.
Yeah.
It had to be the surrounding stone, which is why the first claims of 500 million years was like, oh my God.
Right.
Yeah.
And then they came in, the geologists are like, well, it can get fused with the rock through minerals, but this process would still put it at this age. Still ridiculous age, but not like, super ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Way before any dinosaurs. All right, so one last piece that Kirsten brought up. Let's go to the last page here. The Oklo nuclear reactor in Oklo, Africa. Have you heard of this?
No.
Okay, so this is known as the only, and we can map uranium all over the globe and on other planets,
Yeah.
and we keep a strict, because of it, we keep a strict lid on all the uranium deposits
Right.
everywhere in the world.
Yeah.
All right, this is the only known naturally occurring nuclear reactor that was active 1.7 billion years ago and ran for about 500,000 years. All right, yeah. So,
How do we know these things?
well, because this was a French colony, and back in the day after World War II, when they were mining, when they started keeping tabs on all the uranium, right? Uranium came out of this that had already been burned, pure uranium. They're like, well, this is already used. All right, where'd you get this? So when a big national investigation happened, because they're like, wait a minute, we got used uranium. So someone's got a nuclear reactor somewhere. Discovered it that this is naturally occurring in Oklo here. And so they're like, well, it was the right amount, geological, conditions were right for this nuclear reactor.
Right. Just perfect.
Just perfect.
Yeah.
But when you dig into it, it's almost too perfect. Like it's on a scale that we can't duplicate today, as pure as as it's been done here naturally. Officially, this is naturally occurring. So if you look up Oklo, they'll tell you this is a natural thing. However, these are quotes from the article in here. Incredibly, our modern day nuclear reactors are really not comparable both in design and functionality with this huge mega reactor. According to studies, this ancient nuclear reactor was several kilometers long. Interestingly, for a large nuclear reactor like this, the thermal impact towards the environment was limited to just 40 meters on all sides. So this thing only produced out heat. It was so efficient, only produced out heat 40 meters from this giant nuclear reactor. And he did that without, neutron rods, without control rods,
Right.
without, the things we use to keep the thermal the thermal heat in. So all naturally.
Yeah.
How naturally that's one thing that baffles science. They can't explain this well. Geologists are like, well, I guess the rocks. I don't know. We don't know how it does it.
Something about the rocks.
It produced this much energy and it only heated this much area.
Right.
What's surprising is that nuclear reaction had occurred in a way that the plutonium, the byproduct, was created, and the nuclear reactor itself had been moderated, which is consistent with, this is basically the holy grail of atomic science. They basically kept the plutonium byproduct from we didn't explode, didn't have a chain reaction, there was
Yeah.
no big explosion. They kept the heat in. How it did this naturally, we have no idea. The ability to moderate the reaction means that once the reaction was initiated, it was possible to leverage the output power in a controlled way with the ability to prevent catastrophic explosions or the release of energy at a single time. So this naturally occurring thing was, didn't cause a nuclear explosion,
Right.
and it was so efficient that it could if it could actually put out power more efficiently than we can today with our nuclear reactors.
Yeah.
In other words, all fission reactors, this one is capable of synthesizing plutonium, did so, then prevented it from going critical and exploding by moderating the thermal neutrons that make the fission chain reaction possible by using a moderator like water or a cadmium rods to slow down the absorption of neutrons to prevent the explosion
Right.
from taking place. Didn't have any of that stuff.
Right.
This is all naturally occurring.
Right.
Okay.
So then Dr. Glenn T. Seaborg, former head, or at the time he was the head of the U.S. Atomic Energy Commission, and he's a Nobel Prize winner for his work with synthesis on heavy elements. He pointed out the uranium to burn in a reaction condition must be exactly right.
Yeah.
He said he believed that this had to be, it couldn't be natural, right? But then, says, for example, the water involved in a nuclear reaction must be extremely pure. Even a few parts per million of contaminant will poison the reaction, bring it to a halt. The problem is that no water that pure exists naturally anywhere in the world. Several specialists talked about the incredible nuclear reactor in Oklo, stating that there was no time in a geological estimated history of the Oklo deposit was the uranium sufficiently rich, i.e. uranium-235, for a natural nuclear reaction to occur. So he was basically saying that there's the conditions to naturally enrich uranium wasn't there. The purity of the water for the reaction wasn't there.
Yeah.
All these things would, we have to man make today, right? We have to, we have to purify our own
Right.
uranium. We have to, we have to make water that pure because
Right.
it doesn't exist.
Okay.
When these deposits were formed in the distant past due to the slowness of the radioactive decay in the U-235, the fissionable material would have constituted only 3% of the total deposits, something too low, mathematically speaking, for a nuclear reaction to take place. So he's saying naturally, this couldn't have happened. With looking at the material in the area, looking at everything, it's like just it wasn't available. However, a reaction took place mysteriously, suggesting that original uranium was far richer than was found in the natural formation. So this is one that's got people baffled. Scientists can't explain it. They basically say officially it's a natural. Obviously, it has to be because it's 1.7 billion years old.
Right.
Right. So it's just a naturally occurring reactor.
Right.
Doesn't happen anywhere else on the planet, which is not in and of itself isn't like there could be unique
Yeah.
Right.
to this one spot, but I would say that this Dr. Seaberg is fairly qualified
Right.
in what he's talking about. That's what gets me a lot of this evidence with some of the people that actually are putting this evidence out there.
Right.
I mean, this is he won a Nobel Prize for his work in this area.
Right.
And he was head of the Atomic Commission. So
Right.
he was like saying, it can't be naturally,
Right.
occurring. And this was back before they actually dated it, but the burn would have to have been, like I said, it burned for 500,000 years,
Right.
1.7 billion years ago, pure, in more efficiently than we do with our man-built reactors
Right.
today, so that's one of those things, it's just a head scratcher, like how did it happen? Could it be natural? I mean, they're saying it is, but
Right. But we
you know,
don't have
experts
any
are-
other instances of it happening across.
yeah. So they're like, and all the experts, the geologists, and the experts are saying that it couldn't happen naturally with
Right.
With our current level of knowledge.
with our current level of knowledge. I mean,
Yeah.
granted, it could be I'm not saying this is proof that there was
Right. Well, maybe someone like with the Baghdad battery, maybe someone was just very genius and found a
Well-
specific way, or
Well, there would be no
there'd be
people
nobody
there.
people. This is 1.7
Oh,
billion years
yeah.
ago.
I guess that's true.
This is this wouldn't be humans.
Right.
This would
Well,
be
You have a site where you could tell that the uranium burnt for 500,000 years, yet you've got no evidence that there was anything else there other than this natural deposit.
Right.
well.
I mean-
There wouldn't be anything left. Now we're going to be to our next area. The reason why there's no evidence of this pre-human civilizations is because of the fact that there wouldn't be anything existing. But yeah, we had to throw that last one in there because it's is
It's
artifacts.
just too crazy.
It is.
It's too disregard it. Like it needs to be brought up.
Yeah. The fact that there was a nuclear reactor that long ago.
Yeah.
Just the fact that there's a naturally occurring nuclear reactor
Yeah.
Yeah.
scares the crap out of
insane.
me.
Yeah.
But one that could burn
Well,
that
obviously
pure.
didn't irradiate the
Yeah,
surrounding area.
it didn't irradiate. That's the whole point. Is that it's very efficient.
Right.
That you're like they don't know how.
How's that possible?
We can't do that.
Right.
We have to build all this stuff for it. All right. So that is the first little evidence for our pre-human civilization
Right.
bit of this. So, is there any other proof to pre-human civilization? Well, the nuclear reactor is one point to one piece of evidence. It would be possible to find direct evidence of industrial civilizations before humans as a geological record. Don't go back that far. what's known as the Quaternary period, 2.6 million years. So 2.6 million years is how long it would take for all evidence to be ground under,
Sure.
turned to dust, buried. You know, if we disappeared from the Earth 2.6 million years ago from now, there'd be no evidence of us here.
And how do you have a hammer that's 65 million years old?
Because that is fossilization, which just happens like with dinosaurs.
So we have no other
it's
fossilization
super rare.
from a
Well-
civilization, ancient
Well, the thing is,
civilization?
if there was civilization, well, first off, they're very rare. Fossils are very rare. One, part of the argument for that is the fact that if there was an advanced civilization, you know, they don't randomly dying out in the random, you know, to be fossilized
Right.
in areas. They either just, you know, burn or bury their, you know, unless they were like Egyptians and, you know, mummified them,
Right.
then they might be around. But but yeah, there's no
But
fossils.
None of their, nothing from them. No tools, no buildings, no nothing
Right.
fossilized.
Yeah, but here's the thing. If it was old enough, depending on where it was, so if it was a small civilization, if it was localized, right, it could be. If it was widespread like it is today, I'm sure in 2.6 billion years, something from us will be around somewhere, right, fossilized somewhere, because we're spread to every corner of the globe,
Right.
right? So what they're saying, what their hypothesis, it was like, you know, small, localized, or maybe on a continent that doesn't exist anymore, like Mu or Atlantis or whatever you want to call it. So the oldest scale stretch of ancient surface lies in the Negev Desert, and it's just 1.8 million years old. Older surfaces are most visibly in cross sections via something like cliff face or rock cutouts, go back much farther than the Quaternary, and everything has been turned over and crushed to dust. So basically, even if it was fossilized, that old, it's just been turned over, right? It's just buried. There's just too much on top of it. We just haven't dug that deep yet, right? So we're saying as deep as we've dug is, you know, that we can see is 1.8 million, right? But we obviously found dinosaurs, stuff like that, but those are found in, like I said, cliff faces and stuff like that, where the ground's been churned up, right? Maybe at some point it'll churn up. What they're saying is if they're talking civilization before man, we're talking old enough that any evidence of that is gone. It's been buried over. Even fossils, you know. So, however, there's some traces of civilization that we have in the world that can be detected. Some fingerprints of ancient race. We come to the Silurian hypothesis. The Silurian hypothesis is named by nerds because Silurians are the lizard race from Doctor Who. But they're pretty respectable nerds. The hypothesis has been put forth by Adam Frank, professor of astrophysics at University of Rochester, and Glenn Schmidt, director of NASA's Goddard Institute. Gavin Schmidt. Sorry, Gavin. Director of NASA's Goddard Institute for Space Studies. And these scientists look back through the history of Earth to look for traces of pre-human industry. And the reason why they did this, why you're asking, why are NASA scientists
Right.
looking for this, is because their job was to look for traces of ancient civilizations on other planets.
Sure.
So, like if you go to Mars, if life was older than 2.6 million years, there wouldn't be anything left to find.
Right.
Right. So, what can they find? So, here's what they found. 56 million years ago, Earth passed through a Paleocene Ecocene thermal maximum (PETM). During this PETM, the planet's average temperature climbed as high as 15 degrees Fahrenheit above what we experience today, and it would be almost without ice. A typical summer temperatures at the poles reached close to a balmy 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Looking at the isotopic record from the PETM, scientists see both carbon and oxygen isotope ratios spiking exactly the same way we expect to see after thousands of years of burning fossil fuels. So what they discovered is back in the past, they found 2 incidents in the past. One at, let's see here, how old was this? A few million years ago, and then one that was one was about 80 million years ago. There was a time when their fossil fuels were burnt at a level only seen today in today's industrialized society, right? So what they're saying is there are 2 times in ancient past where there was enough fossil fuel burned so quickly, because there's naturally burning fossil fuels in the world, right? But only in today's society is it burned this much this quickly. So they're saying there's two other periods in the past where all the fossil fuel was burned up, and then it had to take time to replenish. All of it was burned up again,
Yeah.
and then it was replenished. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So they're saying that the only other time they've seen this is when it's industrialized society like ours today, burn this quickly, this much of it. So those are the fingerprints back in the past. Is the fossil fuel burn at those times. Now, was there a catastrophic thing that burned up all the fossil fuel, on the
Yeah.
planet?
Maybe.
It could happen, but it's
Like a meteor strike.
yeah, well, meteor strike. I mean, still, there's evidence of the meteor strike, but when they look back in the past, they're saying that the only time they've seen, there's been stuff like that before. There's been eruptions, there's been meteor strikes, stuff like that. But the only time this much fossil fuel was burnt this quickly is today, right? In our society today, industrialized society. So, one of the hypotheses is that there was some kind of civilization, burn up the fossil fuel, died out. Next one came along, burn up all the fossil fuel, died out. So that's not a very positive looking pattern for today.
Right. True.
But so there is some evidence. These guys are like, they're, obviously none of this can be proved, right?
Right.
This is too old, but there is the fingerprints of civilization that far back. They're like, it happened.
Right.
Something came along and, was assholes like us and burned up all the fossil fuel on the planet.
Right.
Was naturally occurring, or there were, aliens stopped by the refuel? Who knows?
Right. I'll take this.
Yeah, but yeah. So the evidence is that the PETM may have been driven by massive release of burned fossil carbon into the air. Only in our modern time has this much burned fossil carbon entered the atmosphere so quickly.
Yeah.
So even back when we knew there was meteor strikes and stuff like that, catastrophic ones, there wasn't that much released in the air at once. So, and these guys are, the guys putting together this hypothesis are,
NASA scientists.
NASA scientists. So, and that was their job to do this to develop the technology to find this on other planets. And then they're like, well, let's look at our own. They're like, let's turn the clock back and look at our own history
Yeah.
and see. And that's when they discovered two periods that were like, oh my God, this could have been, right? And they're not, and again, they're not saying, oh yeah, there was pre-human civilizations out
Right.
there. They're saying if you're looking for evidence, there is evidence.
Right.
Two possible times when it could have happened.
Mm-hmm.
And it's distributed evidence because they pretty much burn up all the fossil fuel.
Right.
And if there was a civilization, they're gone.
Yeah.
But we know that life on basically the Great Etch-a-Sketch has been shaken 6 different times, or
Yeah.
6 different time periods life had to start over on this planet that we know of.
Yeah.
So, is it possible? Is it possible? So, at all this, what do you think? After all this evidence, well, first off, there's two things.
Right.
There's the ancient advanced civilization, human civilization,
Right.
and then the ancient advanced pre-human civilization.
Right. I really like to think that there was an ancient pre-human civilization that maybe things got terrible here and so they flew off into space and did their own thing, right? That's a very fun
We
theory.
burned all the fossil fuel on this planet. Time to
And
find something else.
Yeah.
Go to a new one.
Yeah. Earth reclaimed and did its thing and now we're here. So that's a fun theory, but I find it kind of difficult to believe just because of how you said there would be evidence even 2.6 you would think that there'd be more being unearthed just from natural events.
Well, what they're saying is 2.6 is the time period when things could be completely wiped out.
Right.
But if we're talking billion
Well,
years ago,
we've got dinosaurs. We've got other
that's true.
evidence.
But that's
of
only
other
65
stuff.
million years ago. We're talking a billion.
Yeah.
Well,
mean-
yeah, I'm not necessarily referring to this. I'm just in general.
Right, right. You would think there would be something, but then again,
Something, yeah.
we're not it's not like we're. When we find these things, it's on accident, or we're
Yeah.
digging them up, right?
Yeah.
Or there's been a shift in the earth.
Right.
We're not digging for this stuff,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it's not like
That's
it's.
true.
But there are also lots of places on Earth where strata is exposed that is millions and millions and millions of years old.
Right.
Right, but then it would
So-
have to be something at that spot where the strata is
That's
exposed.
Yeah.
You know,
But it happens frequently enough that if there were an advanced civilization you would assume if it could burn all of the fossil fuels, it would have to be widespread.
Right.
Yeah.
It couldn't be just localized.
Right.
So you would have to assume that in all of the canyons and volcanic eruptions and stuff, something would have shown up by this point,
Right.
and it never has.
Yeah,
Right.
but it would have to be fossilized. It had to be something that's fossilized because everything else would be ground to dust at this point. That's why these scientists, develop this technology on other planets. Like I said, if it's that old,
Right.
there's nothing left.
Right.
It have to be something that's preserved, like this hammer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
For us to find.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it would have to be an area that was exposed. It would have to be something that got fossilized,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
To be preserved. It just who knows,
Makes it harder to find those
right?
sort of things.
And then here's the thing: is if it was back during, we're talking like when the continents were
Right.
together,
Yeah.
and civilization could have just been in one spot,
Yeah, sure.
we don't, again, this is like crazy.
Yeah. Right. Well, it's fun to believe those things, but I think out of all of this, if anything, what I believe out of this is that maybe human species is a lot older than what we give it credit for. So
Or civilization of human species.
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. So I don't think that that's too difficult to believe that maybe our dating systems isn't as effective as what we think they are, or maybe
Right.
I mean, it's not too far-fetched to believe something like that. So
Right.
I think that's where I kind of
One of the
feel
prevailing
this
theories about this from these people that hypothesize this is that there was an advanced human civilization before, and then they got we regressed,
Yeah,
right?
could be.
And then had to rebuild back up.
Too
Technology
many
was
wars
lost.
or something. Yeah.
Many wars, or like part of the
Natural
continent fell in natural
disasters,
disaster. Comet hit. Graham Hancock, he's one of the guys who's bigger than these theorists. He believes that there was a comet strike which wiped out this ancient civilization.
Right. Well,
Um,
isn't the crater of the Gulf? Isn't that thought
Yeah.
to be a giant
Oh, yeah.
meteor that wiped out?
That's the one that wiped out the dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but there's a ton of stuff. Like there's the stones, like the pathway, the Bimini Road, that's underwater, the underwater pathway,
Yeah.
all this stuff. And everything, like I said, the CIA document got a lot of people speculating.
Yeah.
Like what's going on with this?
Yeah.
But I don't know. What do you think, Doug, about either one of these hypotheses? Any of it plausible at all?
Are we talking the Silurian hypothesis?
Either one. This one and the ancient. First off, let's start with the Silurian one.
I don't think so.
No,
I
it is-
mean, look, they're pointing to a period 65 or 56 million years ago.
Yeah.
Well within the time period that we've found fossils,
Yeah.
and we've found no evidence that humans and dinosaurs coexisted at the same time, or that there was any kind of technology to deal with dinosaurs or anything like that. So, yeah, I don't buy that one.
What about the tool using dinosaur theory?
Dinosaurs were actually intelligent.
Come on,
Which is
look
a
at
theory.
T-Rex's hands. They
They
could use
couldn't
tools.
use tools. That's why they're so angry.
They couldn't be a part of society. They're like, screw
Well,
you guys.
Well, there is a group that thinks that the dinosaurs were, because we're a lot smarter than what we give them credit for.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, all we can go on is the size of the cranium, how big the brain is. However, we know today that it's not the size of the brain; it's the surface area. So the more wrinkly a brain is, the smarter a creature is.
Right.
So like we're talking about the koala bear. It's got a bigger brain than a lot of creatures, but it's perfectly smooth. So koalas are dumb.
Right.
They got smooth brains.
Right.
Yeah.
Dinosaurs may have had wrinkly brains and been a lot
Yeah, we
smarter.
don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
We don't know. We can't tell because no fossilized brains.
Right.
All right. So yeah.
So yeah, I don't buy the Silurian hypothesis. There's can be other explanations for why that much fossil fuel would be burnt in that time period. Why the planet was that hot at that point. So I don't know. The London Hammer is weird.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know anything about geology, so you just kind of have to buy that.
You have to buy the geologist.
You got to buy that. Okay, this could happen. Versus, could there be kind of geological upheaval that could bury something down and fuse it into rock
Right.
that
It was enough
wouldn't
pressure
normally?
or something.
Right.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, and that. It looks. Go total kind of conspiracy theory. That looks like a modernly produced hammer that somebody then tried to make it look like it was a little more ancient than it is. You know,
Yeah.
like, oh, it's not quite as perfect as a press would make it now.
Right, yeah.
But it looks like it was made in a press now.
Right.
Kind of thing. It's
With that purity of iron, too? You're like
Yeah,
looking at
I
that thing.
here's the thing is, and this is why I'm going conspiracy theory here, the opposite direction, is if a civilization was advanced enough to do something like this, where we're going, well, we can barely make it this pure.
Right.
Yeah.
If they were advanced enough to do that, they would be advanced enough to have machines like we do to create these things,
Right.
and it would be far more perfectly made
Right.
than that. This looks like somebody made it on an anvil, kind of, not exactly.
Right, yeah.
So I don't know what they're. Who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That one, okay, we'll chalk that up to the mystery box. Who knows where?
Yeah,
it
who
came
knows?
from. And then, as far as all of the other stuff, we've proven over and over again that ancient man was far more capable than we ever thought.
Yeah.
And I don't have a problem with the idea that they could make stone perfectly smooth, better than we can, or
Right.
as good as we can now,
Sure.
because they didn't have another option.
Right.
Right.
Tools, more advanced tools and stuff, and more advanced equipment have generally made us lazier.
Yeah.
And when it comes to making things by hand, if we don't have a machine that does it for us,
Yeah.
doing things by hand for the average person is is crap.
Right.
Unless there's like a super expert at it. And then we've got super experts who, in art and architecture and stuff like that, who can do some pretty remarkable stuff
Yeah.
that you go, wow, that's possible?
Right.
So,
Right. So, what about the Baalbek foundation stones?
I kind of already addressed that, where,
Yeah, I think it's-
just because we can't conceive of putting that much effort into
Yeah.
moving stuff, it is far more logical to assume that they could
figured it
figure
out.
out
Yeah.
than to assume that there was some sort of help
Yeah.
from
Right.
a super advanced technology that we don't have access to now.
Right, right.
Why would you assume that? Is that really the most logical explanation you could come up with?
Right.
Right.
Yeah, we got repulsor beams in there to move them for us.
Right.
Because right now you're saying these things that are obviously within the time period that evidence would survive, and we would need a super giant crane to move it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we don't have evidence that there was a super giant crane. That
Yeah.
means you're talking fantastic technology
Right.
that could have come and gone.
Right.
And why would they do that?
Right.
Here, we're going to move a couple stones for you,
Yeah.
Right.
and then leave, and leave no evidence, other
Right.
evidence.
Like either the
behind.
aliens or the Atlanteans were just very helpful people.
Yeah.
Maybe it
And
just
there's
stop
like-
oh, you're having trouble with those
Well,
rocks.
so
Here you
sad.
go.
Like,
Like,
I only got time to put 3. That fourth one's not carved out yet, so
so I'm sorry, we've got to.
we'll swing back by next month
Right.
to lift those rocks for you, and then boom, Atlantis is gone,
Yeah,
and then that's what happens.
that's a perfectly logical explanation. I think.
Yeah. Get the,
Come on, Occam's razor, people.
the number of people on that stone.
Wow.
Now, all of you, get lifting.
Get lifted, yeah. Even all those together couldn't lift a 1,000 tons. There's no way. I mean, it would have to be some kind of leverage system that,
All you have to do is, look how they're carving it.
yeah.
You start with, rolling some sort of rolling instrument at that end. You
Yeah.
finish carving, and then push it up onto that, and keep putting things in front of it.
I don't know.
I
1,000
mean,
tons is still.
Who knows? That might crush anything that.
There was a
could
time
move it.
people
I don't
believed
know.
that the Egyptians couldn't do it with 25-ton stones.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
1,000 tons is a little. That's another scale of magnitude that you're like, okay, well,
Yeah.
I don't, we don't know how to do it.
Yeah,
But,
just because we don't know how doesn't mean
mean
it
it
couldn't be
didn't.
done.
Yeah.
right, I agree with this.
Yeah.
Now, like I said, we're looking for plausibility. Is it plausible that there was some lost knowledge? And I'm not talking like repulsor beams. That's that's the fantastic side of it.
Right.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, clearly there was engineering knowledge that we've lost and
Right.
knowledge that we've lost back in the day that was only recently discovered, right?
As far as like making tools,
Making tools and various things. I don't know. I can't. I'm not an engineer. I
Right.
can't explain how.
How that would work.
How
Well, I mean, I
Maybe
I
it's-
believe you have two options at this point for this specific example. Either, well, I guess three. Either the ancient people who were working on this could figure out how to use some sort of instrument, sleds or
Yeah,
logs
whatever
or
it
something to roll it into place. That's one option. Second option is they did have some fantastical engineering, not fantastical, let's say, some amazing, highly advanced engineering where they could build, cranes or whatever that we didn't think they could do.
Right.
But there'd be evidence of that. Or three, some sort of fantastic out there sci-fi technology
Right.
took place.
Yeah.
I don't see another option than
Yeah.
those three. So the idea that, they had some lost engineering.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to.
No, I mean,
I don't care how smart you are. You're not going to think that stone up 30 feet on a.
correct. Yeah. You either figured out a way to roll it into the place it needed to be,
Yeah.
or somebody had a repulsor.
Yeah. That's how. So there's a guy there. So the place 30 feet up from That's how big those things are.
Well,
What do you think the
you've
Romans
got-
built it? Like what they're telling us in history?
That I don't know. Not if the Romans aren't claiming.
Yeah, I mean
responsibility.
they wrote everything down. They listed
Where-
everything.
and where is this at?
Baalbek, Lebanon. So it would be on the outskirts of the Roman Empire too, to build this kind of thing.
No, this would be something. I mean,
If-
is the date massively different between that
Well, the
the
stones are the same age because it's from the same quarry. But I mean, so they can't date. What they're saying is the temples were built. The Romans built the temples, right? But the Romans did not list the foundation building in their description of their
Well, it
records.
makes you wonder if that would be because
So popular theory is
the
that,
where looks the same.
Yeah.
But I'm not a geologist.
well, the
or-
temple's got that's all that's left of the temple is one set of columns.
Well, what I'm saying is that picture they're showing of the transition from the foundation to the temple itself appears to have the same level
Yeah,
of wear on it, which suggests it was built at the same time.
right.
And
And that's what
maybe
that's what they're saying, telling us is that was all built at the same
maybe
time.
they just didn't think it was. Yeah, of course we made a foundation. We didn't need to spell that out.
Right.
We
Mm-hmm.
just said this is the person who built the temple,
That's true.
and that's all inclusive.
I don't know, but
And
there's
presumably this would have had to all been buried in dirt, made a ramp.
yeah.
Because the Romans were really good at making ramps very quickly that they could move lots of stuff up.
Yeah.
Right.
So
But there's no other evidence of the Romans ever being able to move something that big.
No.
And none of the telltale signs of the large block moving that they normally do is present in those blocks. But, all right, so, granted, there could be an explanation for all this.
sure.
Right.
But the question is it plausible? Could it be that there was an ancient civilization?
I don't currently believe so. I don't think there's enough evidence to demonstrate that it could have been. I think there would be a lot more available.
Yeah.
A lot more available evidence that would point to.
Well, there is a
it
ton
than-
more evidence like this. I only, like I said, we scaled it down to what we could.
No, I mean
But, yeah.
evidence of the advancement, not evidence of the results of an advancement.
Yeah.
There's a lot of results that we go, wow, how could ancient man have done that?
Right.
There must have been something advanced helping them. Versus, here's the advanced stuff they used
Right.
to accomplish these things. And there's almost zero evidence of this, lots of evidence of this. And it's
Right.
like, let's just give ancient man some credit that they figured stuff out. They didn't
Right.
need super
Right.
advanced technology to do it.
Okay.
That's my take on it.
Okay.
All right. So, all right, Doug is not
But
plausible.
I will buy that temple one. There was a group of ancient, nomads who got their crap together quicker than other
Oh,
people
go back to
did.
Tepe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey.
mean-
Yeah.
And they lived close to the Fertile Crescent. Food was going to be readily available in that area
In Turkey, yeah.
anyways.
So they'd have to have like a group of hunters who did nothing but feed them.
And or gatherers, because
Yeah.
there would have been lots of naturally occurring
True.
crops.
So they had a group of hunter-gatherers who basically fed them, and then a group of workers
Yeah.
who stayed there and built the
And
temple.
we can't tell how long that took.
Yeah.
No.
It may have taken several generations for
Yeah.
that thing to be put together.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know.
I'm sure back from
Or-
Stone Age.
Yeah, they just kept going, and every successive generation put more stuff up as they figured more stuff out.
That is the straight Flintstone city right there.
Yeah.
That is caveman
Yeah.
built that thing, but yeah. But granted, now that's not saying that wasn't proof of ancient civilization, that was of advanced technology. That was proof that civilization is far older than what the history books tell us.
That in my opinion is plausible. That
Yeah.
there are pockets of places where they got advanced quicker
Yeah.
than other places, because we have modern examples of that, of
Right.
places that aren't advanced to our list because they
Right.
just either choose not to,
Yeah.
Yeah.
or they're cut off from the rest. Of the
Yeah, but that's a civilization twice as old as what we were told.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Before agriculture, writing, pottery, and they built that. So that's pretty impressive. Cavemen, pretty impressive cavemen. Never underestimate yourself.
Try harder.
Try harder. Look at our ancestors, what they did.
Yeah.
All right, so there we go. Doug doesn't think it's plausible. I think I'm not sold on the Solarian problem.
Yeah.
But there's no evidence. There's not enough evidence because there can't be.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, there's not enough for that for me to go, okay, that's plausible. The ancient civilization lost knowledge, I totally believe. Maybe not in like repulsors and like,
Yeah.
crazy stuff like that, but far more advanced than we give them credit for.
Yeah.
I totally believe that. But yeah, what do you think about just kind of doing one last thing here? And this is not part of this, proof of this.
All right.
What do you think about these butting heads of the archaeologists and the geologists when it comes to like the stuff like the Sphinx? Is that just a Copernicus thing where they're like,
I think it's.
we refuse to believe the new knowledge because this is
I think so. I think that's.
because it undermines everything we've said.
Yes, I think that's the archaeologists trying to defend their territory
Yeah.
against evidence that they didn't see before.
Right.
Every geologist has all looked at the pictures. They're like, oh, yeah, that's erosion from rainwater.
Yeah.
Yeah, rainwater. And then they find it's in a desert. And then they find it's the Sphinx. And they're like, what? Oh, what? And then they had to go back and, when did it rain like that here?
Yeah.
7,000 years ago. Wow. So, yeah. There you have it, folks. Again, we still haven't convinced Doug of the strange and the unknown. Maybe we'll have better luck with aliens.
Yeah. We'll see.
You were the part of this theory that I was like, yeah.
Yeah, that was the ridiculous part of the theory. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, hey, you
Oh.
Well, I don't know. I'd say partly convinced. I am willing to go along with civilization is probably older than we think it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, that kind of archaeological stuff, it's all subjective.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
all conjecture. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Right.
sure, they could be wrong.
What gets me is it still we teach one thing, right? Even though we have proof of something else. Like Göbekli Tepe, we were discovered in the 90s,
Right.
right? And we're still teaching that it's,
Yeah, it's just that having been a history teacher, there's not a lot of evidence or emphasis put on it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of willingness to buy newer textbooks.
Yeah.
There's not
Yeah,
a lot of,
it's
you know,
true,
it's
yeah.
just we don't spend enough money in this country on education
Yeah.
Right.
for that kind of stuff to be worth.
Again, I think it's a part of the archaeologists, still the mainstream archaeologists going,
Yeah, it could
You
be.
know.
Yeah, saying no, we got to defend our.
we've got to defend our territory. This is what we think.
And it'll take a while for them to be dislodged from their current
Yeah.
thinking.
Yeah.
So,
Awesome.
yeah, I think that's fascinating. Göbekli Tepe fascinates me with the, realizing that was built by cavemen. You're like, wow. Because every other instance of cavemen is like, finger paintings on the walls inside caves.
Sure.
And then they're carving intricate animals in columns
Right.
in this city over here.
Yeah.
So, proof that, hey, man, there's civilization pops up, various spots. Some people live in caves, and over here they're building temples.
Yeah.
So, all right, guys, what do you think of any of this information? Is there any of the big things we missed? The nuclear reactor thing also messes with me, too.
Yeah.
But, yeah, what do you guys think of this? Do we, have you heard of any of this stuff that happened before? Is there any big evidence that we missed? Leave comments down below. Or any weird topics you think we should be discussing here, or convincing Doug of? Leave those comments down below as well. We appreciate it. As always, please like, subscribe, share with your friends, hit that bell icon, and we'll be back next month with another weird topic. If you want to support the channel and the things that we do here, Doug, how can they do that?
Presumably, we'll have 3 links down in the description. One for our Teespring store, one for our Amazon affiliate link, and the other for our Patreon. You can check us out there and support us on an ongoing basis.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.